How's it hanging, everybody? So today, I really have to do it. I have to talk about Skyward Sword HD. I'm late to the party here. The game originally came out in July of this year. It is now September of 2021, and I've played the game. I've chipped away at it for a long time. I finally finished my playthrough about a little over a week ago, and I wanted to take some time to process, to synthesize, to digest everything that I experienced, the trauma. I'm just kidding. No, it's not trauma, but I wanted to process everything because I have a lot to say about this game. I didn't want to jump on right after I played through it, because then it just would have been a rage out video, and I don't want to be that guy. So I want to, I've had some time to consider everything that the game offers, and I wanted to jump on here and talk about it. I want to preface also by saying that The Legend of Zelda is my favorite game franchise of all time, going all the way back to the first Zelda on the NES and on up to Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity and games like that. It's my favorite series, but here's my dark secret. I have played comically few 3D Zelda games in my life. I've mostly played the 2D games, and I guess that's because I mostly just had the handhelds in my life, the Nintendo handhelds. I haven't had as many of the home consoles. So I've always played the 2D games, and I've only played Breath of the Wild and Ocarina. Those are the only other 3D games that I've ever played. So it was really important to me to give this one a shot. It's, for one, a Breath of the Wild origin story. I happen to really like the way the game looks, and also back when it was announced earlier this year, a YouTuber that I follow, Miss Click, came out, and she covers a lot of Legend of Zelda stuff, and she was very emotional when the game got announced, and she described it as her favorite Zelda game of all time. And I was like, wow, like, this professional content creator covers video games for a living. Zelda is her favorite franchise, just like it is mine, and she says that this is the best Zelda game of all time, and I need to take note of that. And I did, and I was, really hyped up about the game. I made it rain on Nintendo. I was buying the Joy-Con and the Amiibos, stupid thing, and the actually the Amiibo's a beautiful marvel of a thing. I'll talk about that a little later, but I even bought a second set of Joy-Con. Why would I admit that? Why would I do that to myself? But I did buy the second set of Joy-Con because I really wanted to have one that I could use with my Switch, and then I wanted to have one just showpiece that I just protect at all costs, keep it in a protective, like, little display case, and never will it see the light of day until 2025 or 2055 or whenever Wada wants to make me rich and famous, and then I get to sell my Zelda Joy-Con for $10 million or whatever, because that's how things are going these days. So you know what, I'm gonna hang on to this one box of Joy-Con, keep them unboxed, and let the value rise. Sounds like a good plan to me. Not something I do all the time, not something I do very regularly, but I wanted to do it for this game. And it just goes to show, like, these Joy-Con look really, really great, and they're definitely the best, like, kind of special themed Joy-Con that we've gotten. And I don't know why Nintendo hasn't given us more that are of this level, but these just absolutely look great. So I wanted them. So all of this to say, I made it rain on Nintendo. I was really excited about this game. I had picked up the game previously on the Wii U eShop, because you can buy, Wii games on the Wii U eShop. So I did, and it was like $10. Like a couple years ago, the game was like $10. And I played probably through about the first dungeon, and I just wasn't ready to, like, commit to a full playthrough. I just couldn't right at the moment, so I put the game down, and I had intentions of returning to it. And then this version was announced. I liked what I played on the Wii U. I liked I thought the motion controls were a little clunky, a little janky, but I was getting by. I didn't really have any problems. So I was like, okay, cool. We'll roll with it. So then this version gets announced, and the hype train started chugging along. I got really excited. As I mentioned, I made it rain on Nintendo. And of course, I was thinking about the motion controls when I was getting closer to my playthrough of the game. I was apprehensive. I was thinking, maybe these Joy-Con don't quite do everything that the Wii Motion Plus did. And that turned out to be, unfortunately, right on the money. This version of the game, and I'm not saying the Wii version is perfect by any means. I think they're both heavily flawed in the motion controls department, or just in the controls department, period. I mean, this is a game that cannot exist without these controls, because you're either doing the motions yourself, or you have a stand-in for the motions like they did with the right joystick, and neither way is awesome. It's kind of a disaster around every turn. You have to constantly recalibrate. It's very frustrating, especially on this version of the game. You have to constantly recalibrate. If you mess it up just slightly, if you're in the middle of a big boss fight and you're taking damage and you're trying to recalibrate, get back on track, but then maybe in the heat of the battle, your wrist is crooked just slightly to the left, and you recalibrate, and then everything's crazy. Link is slashing down when you're slashing up, and all sorts of weird stuff's going on. You're like, why did that happen? And then you try to recalibrate again, and then you take more damage. And that's just the cycle of madness that you have to deal with in this game. It's some really pivotal moments, and also having to do things for me that are very stressful in video games, like time trials, constantly getting hammered with time trials in this game. Stealth quests, like, come on, man. Stealth. Does anybody really like those? I mean, I know Metal Gear Solid is a very liked game, but does anybody really like sneaking around that much? And if a guard turns their head, you have to start all over. Is that really awesome? It's never been awesome to me. I've never liked that. And so for me, I think there was like 5 big stealth quest areas of this game, and I was annoyed by every single one. None of them are difficult. They're all very workable. They're not a big deal, and that's because the game is very easy. It's easy because it has to be. It was designed because the fail rate of anybody doing these slashes and trying to get it right is going to be so high that they have to compensate by making the game very easy. If it's broken, just make it, very easy to win, and then it kind of takes care of itself. They kind of even each other out, and that's how the game works. I mean, I'm not going to call it like laughably easy, but it's definitely, there's not a lot of resistance to the player, especially if I can imagine on on second or third playthroughs, it's probably like a joke how easy it is, because at that time you remember everything about the controls that you're supposed to know. I need to reconcile with something, by the way, and that's that I'm not good at these controls. The controls themselves are very flawed, but my inefficiency along with that makes it all the worse. And I think that a lot of people are going to be inefficient with these controls, as am I. And then some people are going to be great with the controls. I mentioned Miss Click earlier in the video. She came forward and said that the motion controls, everybody's being a big baby about the motion controls, because she was talking about Skyward Sword and making videos on it before even like this version got announced, and she was just saying, look, everybody criticizes the motion controls, everybody's being a big baby, like, you can swing your arm, it's fine. And I was like, you know what, she's probably right, because it does sound like everybody's being a big baby. Like, what's the big deal? Just like do the motion controls, like, and enjoy the game. Like, what's the problem? And on the Wii, I think that may have been more of a valid stance. But now on this particular version, it's just the dance that you have to do of doing a few motions, then recalibrating, then doing a couple more motions, then recalibrating, then sometimes just recalibrating just because you're just afraid that something's going to go wrong, or maybe you've been perfectly still and you still have to recalibrate. Like towards the end of the game, it's the last dungeon of the game, and you have to use motion controls to rearrange items on a grid, and you're just basically like clicking and dragging the icons, but you're clicking, of course, with the motion controls. And so the motion controls for me got so bad in that sequence of the game that I actually couldn't recalibrate. It was just like not letting me recalibrate. It was like just beyond the point of, it was just like beyond messed up. I couldn't fix it. So I had to actually go hit the home button on the Switch controller, excuse me, and then return to the game, and then I could calibrate and keep going. But I started thinking about that, and I was like, man, if that's that bad right now, maybe that's happened like a bunch of other times in the game. Maybe the boss fights, this has been happening, and my controller's been way more messed up than I realized, and the recalibrating wasn't working, and so it's just all crazy. Like, who knows? Because that legit happened to me several times in this final dungeon. But anyway, I got through the game. It was very important for me to get through the game because I wanted to experience this story. And let me just pause for a moment and say that we got to talk about the good of the game, because this game has some very, very good things going on. The story, many people have talked about and cited it as basically the best part of the game, and that is 100% true. I concur. The story is great. It's touching. It's like it is a very kind of miniaturized story, because Zelda games can be very big in scope, especially when you have something like Breath of the Wild or Age of Calamity. There's so many characters. There's so many, there's like all the towns and settlements of Hyrule and different places all over the map, and you encounter so many characters. And you encounter characters in this game too, but the core story, the main story that's happening, is really just happening between like, maybe about 5, 6, 7 characters tops. And so it's very intimate. It's like, this is not a Hollywood blockbuster. This is more like an intimate theater performance with 7 very quality actors or whatever. And that's what we have here. It's a very intimate, scaled down kind of story. And my playthrough of the game was 50 hours, but it's definitely not 50 hours worth of story. There are long stretches of the game that you go through without really seeing much of any core story advancing. But it's those, the game really revolves heavily around, I would say, probably like 3 to 5 really pivotal scenes where you really get all of the main story progression, and the game is all about those few sequences that are just absolutely, some of them are heart-wrenching, some of them are hilarious. There are characters in the game that are probably some of my favorite characters in Zelda. But again, as much as I like the story, it still was difficult to enjoy it some of the time because of the motion controls. But then we also have to talk about the graphics, because the graphics in this game, for me, the visuals, the performance are absolutely top notch. Of course, this is a Wii game. It's not a remastered game, at least not exactly. Maybe they did a little bit of cleaning up here and there, but it's still at its core the same game, the same experience, just at a higher resolution, higher frame rate. And that's all it really needed to be, because the game absolutely looks great. It is a relatively low poly game because it's on the Wii, but it's still just the art style is so good that it really just looks so clean throughout the entire experience. And the best part is the kind of the performance, the frames per second, 60 frames per second, buttery smooth. never a stutter, never any dip in performance, and a rock solid, crisp 1080p for the resolution. The game just looks and plays like a dream. I wish they made and designed more more Switch games to look like this, because I mean, the game looks good and it just plays perfectly. So I feel like this is almost like, for me, like the foundation of how they should be designing these Switch games. You know, then you look at Breath of the Wild. I mean, Breath of the Wild's got some serious performance issues. It looks great, but it's definitely not 1080p. It's definitely not 60 frames per second. It's 30 on a good day. And this game, however, is just very refreshing to play a Zelda game that performed so well on the Switch. Now, yes, the story and the graphics and the performance for me are really the good takeaways of the game. But everything else, the dungeons were also quite good. The dungeons are very imaginative. They're quality Zelda dungeons. And they're, of course, designed wholly around the motion controls, because everything in the game is revolving around the motion controls and is designed around the motion controls. So, for me, the dungeons were kind of like having, you know, the best piece of pizza of your life. But then, for whatever reason, someone just comes up and just smears Vegemite just all over the top of your pizza. So every bite that you get, just a ton of Vegemite, and it's like, man, there is an amazing slice of pizza underneath all of this Vegemite, but there's still Vegemite on the pizza. I can't enjoy it. I mean, I'll finish it because I'm hungry, but I'm not gonna have a good time. Like, this could actually be unhealthy for me. But so that was my experience with the dungeons and a lot of the game. The game feels a lot like a large dungeon, because it doesn't really have that satisfying, like, overworld experience where you go, you know, for me, that's the payoff of the Zelda loop, is that you go into a dungeon, you get your new weapon, you get your heart container, and then you go out into the world slightly more of a badass than you were when you came in. Because you go out into the overworld, and now, hey, I have a raft. I can go sail on the raft to these little islands, get some more heart containers, get some more coins, whatever, and just level up that way. And then I get to explore the overworld. Well, that doesn't really happen here. I mean, it happens a little bit, but the areas are small and confined, and they are just very kind of linear and branch-like a dungeon. Like, they just all of the overworld sections to me feel like dungeons, for better or worse. I guess a lot of people would like that, because there's a lot of people that just really live and die by how good the Zelda dungeons are in a particular Zelda game. But for me, this one, just wanted to jump on here, give you guys my final thoughts. Just had to get it off my chest. Does it matter that I'm saying this stuff to you guys? Absolutely not. I doubt this video is going to get any views, because this game's already, you know, come and gone. Everyone's already talked about it, but I just had to get on here and really just confess that I was not really good enough at the controls to enjoy the game, unfortunately. I can literally say, like, I was procrastinating playing this game by doing, like, chores around my house. I was like, okay, like, it's a Thursday and nothing's going on. It's like 6 p.m. I can totally play the Zelda game right now. But whoa, look at that big pile of laundry. I got to get to this laundry, man. Like, screw the game. We got stuff to do. So I was literally putting off entertainment for very unentertaining chores in my house, because that's how little I wanted to play this game. Getting through this game was extremely difficult for me, just to, like, get the willpower to go through. And a couple of times I was just like, am I stupid? Why am I playing this? Because I'm not actually enjoying the game, like, moment to moment at all. Like, it has some redeeming elements, but I can't actually, like, find a way to enjoy them, because the gameplay is so compromised for me. And here's what I will say though. If you're in my boat, if you're anything like me, and that was your experience with Skyward Sword, or maybe you're at the home stretch and you just you haven't quite finished the game and you just don't know if you can quite persevere, let me say that the home stretch of the game, like the last dungeon, the last couple of boss fight sequences, whatever, like all of that is actually extremely fun. Like right before you go to the last dungeon, there is a big underwater segment where one of the areas you visit in the game is completely submerged in water, and then you go around like it's a big collectathon, like a Mario style collectathon. You're collecting all these little musical note things, and it's great fun. Like that's legit probably the most fun I had in the game was collecting those stupid musical notes. The last dungeon was really fun, big puzzle, not a lot of combat, but just extremely fun to play. And then the final boss and all that was not that frustrating to me. There were other bosses in the game that were far more frustrating. So if you're in the home stretch, just see it through, because you'll have a better time overall. You can feel like it's time better spent, and you can ultimately walk away with a much greater appreciation of the game than if you tap out right when you're just super frustrated. I mean, it's so easy to do, and I've done it a million times. I mean, I will drop games left and right. I have no problem dropping a game, even a game I'm about to beat. I'm just like, you know what? I'm good. I've done that a lot in my life, and I'm trying to get better about finishing, and it was really important to me to finish this one, and I almost can't believe I did it, because like I said, the patience was tested just around every corner with this freaking game. But I can say that I'm glad I did it. I can also say that the amiibo that I bought for this game, I didn't even use it that much, but the amiibo, the Zelda Loftwing amiibo, is gorgeous. Like, this thing is hyper detailed. And I have a few other amiibo. I have a small collection of amiibo, mostly Animal Crossing, but then there's also like a Link's Awakening and a Toad. So all of my amiibo are super basic. This Zelda thing looks like, I mean, it is not even like a sore thumb cannot even begin to communicate the difference of this thing. It looks absolutely completely different than the others. It is so intricately detailed. It's gorgeous. I don't collect any figures or anything, so I feel like this is the only figure I have is this Zelda Loftwing amiibo, but it's amazing looking. So if you're into figures, man, this is one to look at. And really, Zelda and her Loftwing, I think, is the perfect sort of summary of the little bit of good this game has to offer. You know, because it symbolizes the greatness of the story and the greatness of the visuals of the game, and that's what you want to remember with Skyward Sword. Focus on the good. And anyways, guys, that's it for this one. I'm gonna stop rambling. Take it easy.